So in this segment, we're going to be talking about red wall areas missing out on around £1 billion of development cash, despite the Level Up pledge, and that's because the Level Up pledge is lower. The amounts are lower than what the EU originally gave to these regions, and because it's spread out over more regions, more areas, and it's currently under a legal challenge by the Good Law Project as well, because it's going to areas that potentially it shouldn't really be going to. Classic bit of Tory pork barrel politics. You vote for a Tory MP, will give your area funds even when you don't need it. Because the difference is the EU didn't have to win. The EU didn't have to get these people to vote for it, if that makes sense. But the Tories do. That's why they do this sort of stuff. They'll throw money into middle class areas who don't actually need it. Even though that the town I live in has a Tory MP, where's our development cash? The town's in dire straits, but that's going into a different area completely. But yeah, so if we go into the actual segment, which is that Red Wall and other poor areas of England will lose up to £1 billion of development cash this year alone because of Brexit. This year alone. Who knows? Is that what, £1 billion year on year? That's madness. These areas depend on that cash, and they've lost it. Despite Boris Johnson's vow to level up the country, because these people fell for Tory lies. Essentially, they thought, oh yeah, what we'll do is we'll save 350 million every week, and we can use that to fund our own country. But that was all lies. It was around, I think it's like 200 million net, and the UK massively benefited from being an EU member, which is something we'll talk about in another video, because the Express doesn't actually understand how trade works. But it's just madness what we've done with Brexit. It's insane. And these areas are going to learn firsthand how bad it can be, but then they'll probably just blame the Labour for the financial crash, or say no one could have predicted the pandemic, or just some other nonsense. Who knows what they'll come up with next. But so the government promised to match the grants to local economies by attracting businesses and jobs when the UK left the EU. Foreign direct investment's actually gone down. I think the UK was actually the biggest receiver of foreign direct investments in the EU, and now we're second to France, and that's going to keep going down. But has yet to set up a promised replacement fund. So that money's not being replaced. It's not going to happen because the Conservatives fundamentally do not believe in it. They might throw some money around before the election, but in terms of how sustainable that is, it's not going to work, because for funding to be successful, it has to be long term. All kind of infrastructure projects have to be long term, and what the Conservatives specialise in short termism, pull the wool over the electorate just before the election, and rinse and repeat. And people keep falling for this stuff, man. It's insane. Instead, just 220 million is being made available across the whole of the UK for 2021 and 2022, and no money has yet been handed out at all, even though the financial year is nearly halfway over. These areas, some of them haven't actually received the money that they would have received from the EU. And if these people vote Tory again, honestly, at this point it's on them. If you don't have the faculties to actually look at what's going on, then I'm sorry, Chief, fair enough, you can vote, you deserve to vote, but I don't feel any sympathy for you at that point. The only unfortunate situation is your vote is the same as people who actually do minor reading. Areas of the North and the Midlands, where I live unfortunately, many of which switched to the Tories at the 2019 election, while mine switched at 2010, after the Prime Minister's Levelling Up pledge, received £500 million a year from the EU structural funds. New analysis shows that they all received around £500 million from the EU, and that's not all of the funds. That's just one of the initiatives the EU has done. Now they will only receive a slice of that stopgap 220 million community renewal fund, so it's less than half of what the EU originally would have given, and it's spread out amongst more councils. And councils also have to put in bids to get that money, and obviously which ones are going to be favoured? Tory councils, Tory areas, because what they do is they'll run down the Labour councils, take away their funding, be like, oh, look how irresponsible Labour are, they can't even run a local council properly, and they'll bankrupt it. That's how these people operate. They're not as smart as they think they are. Some areas in the south have been made new priority areas despite criticism and I think legal action by the Good Law Project that other funding pots have been skewed towards Tory constituencies, including those of cabinet ministers. That already happened with Robert Jenrick. He managed to siphon funds towards his constituency despite it being very middle class and not needing the funds. Let me just pause. I can't pause that. Great. In total, English regions were awarded £112 billion from the EU, the latest figures available showing a loss of up to £1 billion this year. That's, these figures, these are, people are relying on this money. Like, some of it goes to, I think, like art projects and things like that, which, galleries, which I don't think are needed as such, but some of that money goes to infrastructure and other things, and that money's gone. It goes to businesses, that money's gone. They're going to struggle a lot. The biggest likely losers are the Midlands, £190 million, Yorkshire 143, Cornwall 95. I think they get just 5% of the funding the EU originally gave them. That was a video I covered, I think start of this year, maybe last year. I can't remember, but as someone, a very astute commentator pointed out, at least now they get to decide where that 5% of the funds are being spent, which is pretty funny. That was a funny comment by that lady. I respect that comment. The Northwest, 88 million, and the Northeast 80 million. So they've lost a lot of money. They've lost a lot of money, the top and bottom of it, and I don't know what these councils and these areas are going to do without that money. Wales will be even harder hit, having been in line to receive £373 million a year, while Scotland received £125 million a year. And the other thing is, right, Wales typically votes Labour, so that's even less incentive for the Conservative government to, give these funding projects to the Welsh, considering they're run by Labour, and obviously the Tories are following a very rampant policy of pork barrel politics. So good luck, Wales. Labour said the revelation makes a mockery of the pledge to tackle the gulf between rich and poor areas, whilst one northern business group said it suggested levelling up will mean nothing. I mean, like I said, Boris Johnson can say, it's like when Super Mario gets the mushroom and then the fire flower, he turns really strong and, he's an absolute nuisance. But realistically, we've been hit by the Goombas, and some of these industries will be on their last life, no doubt. Some so-called red wall areas are suffering potentially bigger losses than the figure suggests, because the Tees Valley, Durham and South Yorkshire were tipped to move into the higher funding bracket before Brexit. So these areas, Tee Valley, Durham and South Yorkshire, were meant to go into the higher funding bracket because poverty is so rampant in some of these places. And they obviously need the money, but now they're going to get even less than they should have gotten if we stayed a member of the EU. It's just... I've never seen so many people collectively shoot themselves in the foot. You could argue MAGA voters are the only ones. Even then, that might be a tough sell. Big James, somewhat Ramsbotham, we spoke about him a lot. He was talking about to replace the EU funding was crucial to turn around the economic deprivation. You need the economy to, spending has to be bottom up, not top down. That's how you get a much stronger economy. Despite being first proposed in 2017 by Theresa May, and even then that funding was way lower than what the EU were actually giving us at the time, we still have little indication of what it will do and how it will work. It's true, because they haven't actually come up with a plan yet. That's the problem. So they haven't come up with a plan to what they're going to do with regards to the money. And that means that money's not going to get out to people anytime soon, and they need it. Steve Reed, Labour MP, Shadow Community Secretary, said this research makes a mockery of the Tory pledge to fix the gigantic regional inequalities they have created. And that's a good statement there. They have helped to create these regional inequalities, and they're doing nothing to fix it, because that's what the Conservative Party lives on, giving money to the top, the donors, all these people, and keeping the poor man down. And unfortunately for these people, they didn't realise that they were the poor man being kicked down, and they will continue to be kicked unless they vote for a better party. Even the Lib Dems are better than the Tories. Even the Lib Dems. And I say that as a person who does not like the Lib Dems. But they are better. Not only is the government failing to fulfil its promise to match what these regions have lost, which that's what Boris Johnson promised, is making them bid against each other for what little funding there is, prioritising richer areas over poorer ones. And you've got to think that if you're a council which received the funds, say in Cornwall, and now you're being told you have to compete with other constituencies, you're not going to be prepared for that, because you're going to have no idea what the bidding process looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some weird bidding process where maybe you donate to, a Tory MP or councillor, and that's how you get the funds. That wouldn't surprise me at all, but that's just speculation on my part. Despite the years of austerity after 2010, poorer regions of England lost almost all economic development funding from Whitehall, prompting fears that EU money would also go after Brexit. So a lot of that EU money, by the looks of things, was only given just because of austerity. So because of David Cameron's idiocy and inability to understand economics. So that's why a lot of the EU funding went to these areas, because of David Cameron. And now all that money's gone. So austerity is here to stay long term, especially after 2020. And that money that was replaced by the EU, those development funds that were replaced by the EU essentially for the most part, that no one's going to replace those. That money's gone. So these areas are, in trouble, and no one's going to save them this time. The Brussels grant scheme, 1.73 billion across the UK in 2018, funded the research centres and business parks, among other schemes, levering in private finance to boost the public spending. So this is more socialism. This is, Brussels essentially spending money to help invest and get businesses into the UK, or at least expand. And the thing is, right, this is something Boris Johnson promised would happen, and he never did do. So I don't know what's going to happen to these business centres now, how they're going to be funded, but there's going to be a lot of people losing out because of their infrastructure crumbling, essentially. Maybe these business centres will no longer function, and then those businesses and people that use them are going to struggle dramatically. In response, the government promised the UK-wide Shared Prosperity Fund to replace it, but has been dogged by delays and uncertainty over how it will operate. And you've got to remember, Brexit was done, in 2016? Theresa May promised some ideas in 2017. Boris Johnson won an election at the end of 2019. It's been well over a year now. We're heading towards the 2-year mark, right? How has it taken him almost 2 years to figure out what the hell he's doing with regards to this? I'll tell you what, he has no intention of doing this. He has no intention of setting up this shared prosperity fund. He might do it a year before the next election to show, oh, look at this levelling up. But he's not going to do it anytime soon, because he has no incentive to. Because if these people vote Tory again, they've shot themselves again. But if they potentially vote for Labour, as long as they don't do it en masse to the point where Labour get a majority or it goes to a hung parliament, the Tories don't care. If they have a majority of 10, 20 or 30, they're not that bothered, because all they care about is power in the end. The majority size doesn't matter, so long as they get a majority. They don't care about the ordinary person. So yeah, it's just shameful that this has happened, but I wonder what the response will be from these places. Are they going to vote for someone else, or are they going to continue now to vote Tory, even though the Tories keep hitting them? I don't know, Chief. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.